This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream, which is, just for this week, at its cheapest price ever of $11.59 a year. Get access to bonus TLDR content and all of our videos ad-free by signing up to the CuriosityStream Nebula bundle deal right now. It's linked down below. After months of waiting, it's finally here. The Sue Gray Report. Commissioned by Boris Johnson, the report looks into lockdown rule-breaking in 10 Downing Street, whether there was a partying culture, and who was responsible. So let's break down what this final 40-page report actually has to say, and run through what could happen now for Boris Johnson. So, what's actually in the report? What did Gray find out? Well, the most shocking revelations to come from the Sue Gray report were the specific details about how the parties were conducted in number 10. And that's because the parties often don't come across as if they're being held by serious members of the government and civil service, but instead, they often look like they're being held by teenagers who have just got their first taste of cheap spirits. For example, at the 18th of June 2020 event, which was held to say goodbye to a number 10 official, Helen McNara brought along a karaoke machine. There were also reports that an individual was sick, and that there was an altercation between two individuals at the party. In fact, the last person to leave, who left after tidying up, only departed Downing Street at 3:13 a.m. At another party on December 17th, people stayed until about 1 a.m. And just a day later, there was a discussion about purchasing a wine fridge for the office, and people were asked to chip in £5 towards the purchase. And by the way, that conversation on screen is real. Anyway, maybe unsurprisingly, that day's party was said to be crowded and noisy, and others within the building characterized it as a party. It was so raucous, in fact, that cleaners the next day noticed that wine had been spilled on the wall, as well as on a number of boxes of photocopier paper. In fact, on this point, in the conclusion of her report, Gray even states, "I was made aware of multiple examples of a lack of respect and poor treatment of cleaning staff," going on to describe it as unacceptable. Presumably, this wine incident was part of it, but her words imply that there was additional evidence of this. Furthermore, at the 16th of April 2021 event, the event that took place the day before Prince Philip's funeral, Gray also acknowledges that a slide/swing was broken in number 10's garden. And again, that doesn't sound like the kind of thing you'd expect from serious members of government and the civil service. Aside from the rather teenage-esque nature of their parties, arguably the most significant revelation in the report is how civil servants actually discussed the gatherings. In fact, in early 2020, some staffers demonstrated an attitude that parties were okay and simply just something which should be hidden from journalists and kept out of the news. Possibly the worst example of this was when Martin Reynolds was discussing the 20th of March 2020 gathering. In an exchange with a number 10 advisor, Reynolds was sent the following message on WhatsApp. "Just a flag, the press conference will probably be finishing at about that time. So helpful if people can be mindful of that as speakers and cameras are leaving, not walking around waving bottles of wine, etc." To which Martin Reynolds replies, "Will do my best." Later that day, Reynolds got back on WhatsApp, and seemingly discussing another story that he didn't deem to be newsworthy, he messaged, "Best of luck, a complete non-story, but better than them focusing on our drinks, which we seem to have got away with." It seems obvious then that there was clearly an attitude among senior number 10 staffers that their partying was acceptable as long as it didn't become a news story. It's additionally clear that this attitude was present all the way back in May of 2020, and that it persisted until at least December of that year, as demonstrated by an event on the 15th of December 2020. This was the quiz at number 10, when an email was sent around about the drunkenness of people within the building, and in effect, people were told to leave via the back door of the building to avoid being photographed by the press. To most people, this would demonstrate that those involved knew that what they were doing was wrong and were only worried about being caught by eagle-eyed journalists. And internally, many advisors seemed rather flippant about these gatherings. The May 20th gathering in the garden was signed off by a member of Number 10's internal events team. Sounds like a lot of fun. That's fine. However, the tone did shift somewhat. Later in the year, at the December parties, emails inviting people to the events often seem to include some sort of disclaimer encouraging people to join remotely and not to come to work specifically for the events. It seems then that between May and December, Number 10 developed their own set of rules, becoming more conscious about the legality of their parties, but excusing them on the condition that no one came in especially, rotas were used, and social distancing followed. However, that simply wasn't the law, and this was a custom rule set, which other workplaces would never have been afforded. Gray even acknowledges this in the conclusions section of her report, admitting that many will be dismayed by the events, and going on to comment that they don't reflect on the wider civil service. She also acknowledges that the way that gatherings were developed was not in line with COVID regulations, and that many people in attendance were in breach of the law. So, that's the detail of the events as outlined by Sue Gray. And now we know a little more about the details, it's worth addressing some of the retorts made by Johnson's supporters. Firstly, looking at these photos, many would dispute that they're even parties. I mean, it's called Partygate after all, and where's Pin the Tail on the Donkey? Now, to be fair, these might not look like major parties, but the point isn't what the definition of party is. It doesn't really matter how many party boxes were ticked, although someone being sick at the leaving drinks is a box tick for sure. Regardless, the rules clearly stated that social gatherings were forbidden, so the definition of party doesn't really matter. The fact they were gathering is enough to break the rules. It doesn't need to be a party. But what if these weren't even social events? Maybe these are work meetings and just ordinary, dull leaving drinks, as the Telegraph's Andrew Lillico claimed before he blocked us for questioning his justification. However, whether or not these are normal workplace events isn't the issue either. The law specifically stated in November 2020 that gatherings of 2 or more people aren't permitted unless they're absolutely necessary for work purposes. In his statement yesterday, Johnson insisted that saying goodbye to a team member was essential, but it's hard to justify how these leaving drinks are necessary at a time when people weren't allowed to go to funerals or say goodbye to loved ones, especially when these goodbye messages and drinks could easily have been conducted over Zoom. Even more so when necessary leaving drinks like these ended with some so drunk they were sick, and others getting into minor altercations. In fact, the issue of work doesn't even play into this at all. The law at the time only allowed people to go into work if they were socially distancing and fulfilling totally necessary functions. So even if they were allowed to be in the office, even if they try to justify it as a morale-boosting exercise following a challenging period for staff, these parties, gatherings, whatever you want to call them, still aren't justified, because morale boosting has never been specified as an essential work function. Despite the claims made by Michael Fabricant and other supporters, other professions who have been working hard, like nurses, still weren't holding drinks after work. The hardness of work is never in question here, because the law didn't allow you to break the rules if your stress met a certain threshold. So ultimately, it doesn't matter if this was a party or not, it doesn't matter if it would be allowed in a workplace ordinarily, and it doesn't matter how hard people have been working. These events seem to have clearly breached the rules regardless, hence Downing Street receiving more COVID lockdown fines than any other building in the UK. And by the way, if you want more from TLDR, then you can check us out on Nebula. You've likely heard us talk about our streaming service Nebula before, but it's at its lowest price ever right now. So give me 1 minute to explain to you why you should care. And as always with TLDR, there's 3 reasons. Firstly, signing up to Nebula gets you a ton of additional TLDR content. We release some of our videos exclusively on Nebula, and those are full-length proper videos, as well as a super fun studio tour. We also release longer versions of some of our videos. In fact, we release a longer version of our show, The Daily Briefing, on Nebula every single day. That's a lot more TLDR for you every day. Secondly, everything on Nebula is ad-free. And that's not just TLDR either. That's all of your favorite creators like Wendover Productions, Real Life Law, Polymatter, Legal, Half as Interesting, and tons of others. And it's all ad-free, so there's no mid-rolls, and I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. Thirdly, signing up and watching on Nebula really helps the channel. And here's the maths. TLDR viewers signing up to Nebula has significantly improved our ability to monetize our content, which has allowed us to begin employing more staff and investing in new technology to improve our content. You might not notice it quite yet, but you soon will, and signing up is super helpful to make that possible. So, you're convinced, right? Did I do it in a minute? Who knows, it's pre-recorded. But anyway, if you did want to sign up for Nebula, the cheapest way to do so is with the CuriosityStream Nebula bundle deal. That way, if you sign up to CuriosityStream at the crazy low price of $11.59 a year, then you'll also get free access to Nebula as long as you're a paying member. That's right, 2 streaming services for less than $1 a month. And by the way, that crazy low price only lasts for this week. And it's worth saying that CuriosityStream is awesome. It contains absolutely boatloads of high-quality documentaries on all kinds of topics that I know that TLDR viewers are going to love. So if you want both services for $11.59 a year, this week only, then the link is down below. And if not, well, I can't say I haven't tried to convince you. Thanks for your support.